Hello, and today I'm gonna break down Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2 Episode 8 Under the Cloak of War. But before I get into it, please subscribe and start commenting, as well as if you feel it in your good graces to give a like as well. Okay, so the episode starts out with us looking at this ship, which looks like it's a 23rd century version of the Prometheus class, but we get a log from Pike saying that they're going to transport an ambassador, and the ambassador is Klingon. Well, the ambassador beams aboard and Pike, Una and Lan greet him, and the ambassador is supposed to be escorted to his quarters, but he asks for a tour of the ship, and we then see Ortegas in the chair on the bridge, and her and Yura are arguing, and Yura is convinced that the ambassador is true and he really wants peace, but Ortegas believes that he is hiding and that he just wants access to Federation secrets, but Yura still believes he's sincere. But Ortegas goes on a rant and the ambassador comes in, and it looks like Ortegas is a little embarrassed, but then they continue on their tour, and we then see Spock working on a replicator, and he's trying to make a reactor Gino, but it comes out cold, and the ambassador comes in, and so he has to fix the problem really fast, and the ambassador comes over. They replicate the reactor Gino and it burns his hand, so they take him to sick bay, and Mbenga freaks out when he sees the ambassador because he has some PTSD. They get the ambassador wound healed, but Mbenga goes to his office and can barely sit down, and then they roll the intro. And right now I would ask that you sign the petition to save Star Trek Prodigy, but we get a flashback to the moon of Jagal from some time during the Klingon Federation War, and we then see a more younger, inexperienced Chapel arrives by shooting at Jagal and kind of had a rough landing, and she is greeted by this commander, and this character is played by a very old Star Trek veteran who has played many roles in the franchise. But we then see him show Chapel the ropes, and he tells her that she's now the head nurse and introduces her to Mbenga, but then they start getting casualties from the front lines, and they then start helping people get off the transporter pad and get one man into it and store him there. We then cut back to present day, and Mbenga is working on a biobed, and Pike comes around and just asks for a chemical which Pike is going to look in his cooking, and Pike tells Mbenga and Chapel that Command wants war veterans to get to know the ambassador, so Chapel and Mbenga have to be at the dinner with the ambassador, and Pike leaves and Chapel and Mbenga discuss, and Mbenga says that they have to go. We then see Chapel and Mbenga performing more hands-on surgery, but then we come back to present day, and Mbenga is walking and he comes across Ortegas, and she doesn't want to go into Pike's quarters, and she's convinced that the ambassador is hiding something, but Mbenga convinces her to just put on her poker face just for tonight. We see Chapel and Spock talking, and then Mbenga and Ortegas walk in, and the ambassador is talking about his experiences, and Ortegas and Chapel are just buying none of it, but Spock, being blunt, goes over to the ambassador and gets him to tell another story. Chapel and Mbenga then have a drink. Mbenga then has a flashback of the young officer who he had befriended and just talking him down, but then an Andorian Black Ops officer comes in and tries to recruit Mbenga, but Mbenga says he doesn't want to, but he still tries to and eventually walks away. We then come back to the present, and Ortegas confronts the ambassador, but despite everyone trying to get her to stop, the ambassador just sits there and takes it, and people start leaving, and the ambassador sets up some martial arts event with Mbenga. We then see a flashback of that officer and Mbenga talking, and Mbenga tells him some wisdom, and the Black Ops team are talking about their strategy, and Mbenga and Chapel talk about it, and Chapel says that for Black Ops that they aren't very quiet, but the young officer is up and he's going back out to the front lines, and Mbenga is a little heartbroken at this, but we then cut back to the present, and Spock and Chapel are walking. Spock and Chapel decide to take time away from each other. We then cut back to the past and there's an explosion and the Klingons are attacking them, and Chapel and Mbenga have to get back to the transporter and get it back online, and in order to save lives they have to delete the guy in the transporter. We then cut back to the present and the ambassador and Mbenga are having their sparring match, and Mbenga asks him about him killing his men. And we flashes of his men being killed, and then they continue the match and then they finish the match, and we then see Mbenga in the shower as he's having flashbacks to the Battle of Jadal. We then have a flashback where Chapel is getting civilians off the transporter pad, and the Andorian then dies and has to put the dead bodies away, and we then see Una and Pike talk, and Una tells him that they need to get the ambassador off the ship, and Pike eventually agrees, and we then see Mbenga in the past gear up to go fight the Klingons, and he gives Chapel some of that super soldier serum and walks away. We then see the ambassador come into Mbenga's quarters, and it's revealed that Mbenga was the one who killed the ambassador's men, and a fight breaks out between them and Mbenga kills him. Chapel brings this to Pike and then he goes to Mbenga and they talk, and Starfleet is going to want an investigation, and Mbenga keeps saying that he didn't start the fight, and Pike takes him at his word. And then Pike walks away, and end of episode.